Our next guest is a man I have known what feels like forever, since my early career, not to make you feel old there, John, but it's been a long time. But his organisation's always been pushing the sector to go beyond where it's at and to really think about how it's measuring its impact and its social value. So that's what John Eady, who's the Chief Exec of Knight Kavanagh Page, is going to talk to you about now. So John, over to you.
Yep, feeling old. Sorry about this, but in a long line of people who are going to be dashing off, I've got a flight at 3 o'clock from Gatwick, so I will be diving straight out the door. It's not because I want to avoid any flying fruit or anything at the end of this. My colleague David McKendry is here to chat about anything we bring up today. So, the slightly traditionally consultancy wordy title of this is Out of Sight, Out of Mind, getting genuine social value from discretionary pricing leisure card schemes. The reason why we've dropped this into this agenda is actually we've heard some fantastic presentations this morning, some impassioned ones from Lisa and others, about what's going on, all the different programs. Well, I suppose we're trying to boil this down to the things that, if you like, remain on the ground at local level. And in essence, we've got leisure facilities, and most local authorities are rationalising those like there's no tomorrow. But you have leisure facilities, and you have some semblance of an operation of a council which commissions that either to a trust via its own leisure DSO or to a contractor. And one of the things that we think is missing from that is the social side of things. A lot of it's about money, a lot of it's about reducing the subsidy to zero, or indeed making a surplus from the operation of leisure facilities. And in our view, there simply isn't something in there that deals with the sort of people that the majority of the speakers have touched on this morning. So the questions we've asked are we asking enough from our leisure card schemes and the operators that we're requiring to run them? Do we measure them? And if we do, what do we measure, if anything? The outcomes we should aim for and expect, and the social model of leisure provision. So I'll bounce on through this. Are we asking enough? The short answer is no. If you want your operator to tell you about how many £35 a month direct debits are coming in, what their attrition rate is, how many new ones they're bringing in a month, they'll be able to tell you that like that. If you ask them how many people who are on any form of leisure card or related subsidy-based provision coming in, they probably won't know. If they do know, it'll take a few weeks to dig that information out in most cases. Because, simply speaking, it isn't really that important. We have national templates for procuring new leisure centres, for procuring a leisure management contractor, to deal with community use of schools, for PPS and other things. If you like, Quest edges around this issue in the context of the some things that are in it. But we don't really have a template for the way in which we would like to see structured pricing set up, and indeed related communications and discretionary schemes set up for the people who struggle, as per a lot of the speakers today, to access mainstream leisure provision. Essentially, as I said, if they're not earners and paying, we don't know what's going on. And there is no template. In my view, there isn't really even any strong guidance on this. So, to if you like, reinforce the point, do we, with any consistency measure, in the context of leisure card, discretionary priced access, the people who are coming in, how many, their demographic, their transition, in the sense how long they stay, the extent to which they've been referred by an agency, out with GP referral, and the extent of retention and attrition amongst those groups. I guess we, as a company, work with 100 local authorities every year. Certainly in England, we probably work with at least half the local authorities and done a lot of work around procuring new leisure centres, new contracts, business development and review, and it's simply an area that's lacking. We don't really then have a basis upon which to measure the contribution made by a contractor or a trust in regard to physical health, mental health, weight management, pre-operative conditioning, post-operative conditioning, all the other things that are fundamental to many of the agencies out there that are clamouring from some sort of involvement, some sort of return from the sport and physical activity sector. So, the great philosopher, Chris Akabusi, and actually he is a great philosopher, said, what gets measured gets done. Now, I think that's really very significant in the context of this area of work because it isn't being measured. And it certainly isn't getting done. What we have is, if you go onto any given operator's website, a range of what I would call variable social categories. They can range from unemployment, income, support, housing benefit. They generally give some sort of junior discount. You quite often get an age-based discretionary discount. For some it's over 60s, some it's over 70s. My personal view is we shouldn't even consider over 60s until we've got a universal offer for the over 70s. Used to be over 50s in some places, and that's progressively disappeared. And it can be a variety of themes around that, and a lot of people have GP referral. And what we have in general is what I would call a passive operator. They don't particularly publish and put to the forefront what's going on with regard to the discretionary offer. The eligibility and vetting is sometimes actually quite off-putting. In fact, it's often quite difficult. The discounting is limited. So, for example, if it costs £6 for a swim in your local pool and it's £5 on the discount, I'm not sure what fundamental difference that makes to someone who's fundamentally struggling to put the money together for a swim in the first place. I actually had a couple of conversations with operators this week, and they said, well, you know, people are prepared to spend £50, £60 a month on their Sky, on the cost of their Sky provision, or on other sorts of television, other entertainment. Well, that's actually none of it. Who cares? That's none of our business. That's none of our business. If for people the price of accessing a facility is an issue, or is part of the issue, we need to consider it. It doesn't matter what else they spend the money on. Our job is to promote physical activity. There are a lot of time limits. There are a lot of exclusions around peak and off-peak use. Well, if I'm unemployed and I want to play football with my mates who are employed, I really don't need to be put in a position where we can't find a time that's mutually agreeable. I think it's important to recognise that few, if any, operators offer what I would call programme allocations for taught and led activity for people on a substantive leisure card or discretionary discount. And individual pricing, which applies to gym and swim, doesn't really apply to things like badminton or five-a-side. So if I am coming to play badminton or five-a-side with you as an operator, I have to pay the full price because there is no mechanism to allow me to come at a lower rate. Now, price isn't the only issue, and I don't want to make out that it is, but price is a factor that enables other things to be drawn in. And other people today have talked about value, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So in our view, the ideal leisure card model should look a little bit more like this. There should be a range of locally authorised agencies who don't just recommend sport and physical activity, but they are there and authorised and enabled to sign you on in the way that we sort of do with GP referral. So if we start with GP practices at the top of the list, that could extend to health centres, adult social services. I won't go through all this. But for example, housing associations, by definition, housing associations are dealing with people who are not owner-occupiers, who would tend to be, if you want, at the bottom of the social food chain. And from that point of view, they would have access to those people, and if they have access to those people in the context of a relationship with an operator, can do a lot more by virtue of individual and interpersonal communication to reach people than any range of other sort of broader multilateral programs. What it also needs is an understanding between those agencies around what is, if you like, accepted as a defined social need. So whether it's about people who are overweight and obese, who are isolated, who are post or pre-operative, people they simply want to enable to maintain an independent living lifestyle, or people they classify as at risk. If we pre-agree that, and we say that a range of people who have access to the people that we're trying to reach can pre-sign up people on the basis of a pre-ordained and organised system which offers a realistic access opportunity to a local leisure facility, that surely is going to be a route via which we can bring a lot more people in, or set up a mechanism to bring a lot more people in than what we have now. At the same time, and a lot of reference has been made to this today, we want operators that are fully geared up to receive. We've heard quite a bit about mental health training, about people who are better geared to working with people with a wide variety of disabilities that may apply. And it's fundamental that as the two entities work together, the readiness to receive is built in as part of the mechanism that links to the leisure card, the discretionary access, and the communication processes that appertain to people that we are trying to bring in who will need more support. And it isn't just about having an illness or a disability. It's simply, for many people, it's simply about crossing the threshold. And that's where the communication and the access to the individual that we tend to keep calling the harder to reach applies. The final thing at the bottom of the right-hand box there is about having an FROI measure in place. Your contractor, your trust, your leisure DSO is now getting rewarded for producing a leisure or running a leisure centre that delivers a surplus or that runs at break-even. They're not getting rewarded for anything that relates to the social return on investment they offer you. And until that's measured, and until it's given a value, because actually if someone's coming in at 10% of the headline price, the operator should get the credit for the value of the opportunity that they're giving to the individual, and that should be on the balance sheet. So as well as asking these operators to do it, they need to get full recognition for the contribution they make to it around a structured scheme and programme. So the overall model, apologies for the lot of boxes here, Universal social categories, multi-agency, jointly, preferably nationally recommended. There is no consistency. I'm probably looked at 40 or 50 researching this. There is no consistency about the range of things that people consider to be impediments to participation that are on the list. There should, in my view, be a reasonable set of locally specific authorised agencies which are involved in what is broadly now called social prescribing, ranging from GP practices to the authority itself, to health visitors to police. There's a thing called MEC, making every contact count, which I think could be the underpinning of this and could be a really superb way of, if you like, drilling this in to the way that we operate at local level. It needs agreed parameters at local level, and it needs, most of all, what it needs is partner commitment. It doesn't need partner commitment to all that much, apart from doing something within the spheres of their own influence and within their own capacity to communicate with various people. It needs to be based far more on individual need. At the moment, it's based on the classification of an individual in most cases. I'm unemployed, I'm on income support, I'm a junior, I'm over 60, which I'm not quite yet, thankfully. There is an opportunity to use this process to really classify the main individual needs that we think merit some sort of drive. So, for example, it doesn't have to be permanent discount or discretionary access-based. It can be something that gets people across the threshold for 4 visits. So if you're an old, fat, grey, balding bastard like me, who really does need to take more exercise, the process is just designed to push me over the threshold for 4 visits on the basis of a high level of discounting or free, from which you then expect to extract £35 a month thereafter on the basis of the quality experience that I've had. And it does need geared up operators. It needs good introductory fixed term mechanisms. It needs discretionary pricing, which is much, much more flexible. So it should be from 0 to 90% of headline price, as opposed to maybe 10 or 25% off the headline price. That, in effect, is just deterrent discretionary pricing. It needs cross-the-board trained staff of the type that's been referenced today, whether it's to do with people who are simply embarrassed about their bodies, to people who are visually impaired, to people who are simply completely unfamiliar with the environment that we're asking them to utilise. And it needs a much, much greater proportion of taught and led programmes. So, for example, why not 1 in 10 swimming lessons allocated to a young person who's referred from a particular environment, who otherwise is highly unlikely to be able to learn to swim? Be honest now, I know there's a lot of other research going on, but we sort of know who these people are already. We know who's at the bottom of the food chain, we know who isn't participating. And we also know that poverty is the #1 issue in the context of non-participation, notwithstanding all other factors and influences. And it needs, in my opinion, when you're drawing up your contract for your 10-year, 15-year, 20-year arrangement with your leisure operator or your in-house trust or your contractor, a locally determined, specified place in the contract that's drawn up. It just ain't there. What that covers then, self-referral, people who do find their way, notwithstanding the range of, if you like, classifications, and agency-based referral. And what it ultimately needs is measurement and feedback so that we know what's happening, we can sit and have an intelligent conversation with the operator or the contractor at the end of the day, but also so that contractor can genuinely face you as the local authority or the other entities involved and say, the book value of what we're doing for people that we're all supposed to be looking to help is this, if you like, helping the active to get active. What I would say is it's not the job of the operator to find these clients and customers. I don't think it is. GP referral is there, and that's traditional. I think it's the operator's job to be ready to receive them, to have good pricing and other forms of mechanism in place, to give them the same value, ascribe them the same value as customers as the people who pay the full fee, to measure the attrition and retention of people that were hard to get to in the first place, and therefore we should make it twice as hard to lose them. That's my Uber for the flight. And we need to measure and record the value of the provision made and the opportunity cost. Give the operator the credit. At the same time, it is our job as external operators and others involved in the field, whether we're in mental health, housing, local authorities, children and young people's services, social services, health or whatever, to try and help within any given local context and environment clear criteria for this. Be clear about the outcomes we want for this. So, for example, it isn't really enough to say this person lives in this housing estate, we'd like them to use this. We want to have an outcome that relates either to our objectives or to more generic objectives. So whether it's losing weight or retaining the same weight, or whether it's to do with maintaining independent living, those have to be tied together in a way that also feeds the contractor. Someone said when you employ volunteers, you need to say thank you. The same is true, I think, of people who step up and do a little bit more corporately in the context of some of these areas. I think it's also important that we start this in a way that's reasonable, that's manageable. But we do need to start it. It's got to start somewhere. Yes? I'll be done, don't worry. We need reliable off-site client identification and sign-up processes. In other words, if I am a housing association, I need to know how the system works, how to give someone a card and say, go there. Someone will be in reception to meet you, to show you around, to let you know what's going on. And as I've already said, need to acknowledge contractors' return. We must also be clear about what we're doing and what we're getting. The world is full of our world, sport is full of this. Everybody's looking, and we must have had 200 stats today, and they're all over the place. But around this, and around this specific issue, everybody's got to be on the same page. Otherwise, it's too easy to dodge it. And it isn't about the presentation, isn't it? So look at this, we offer a discretionary card scheme. It's about it's about the outcome, not the input. We know all about the model of change and all the other things, a number of people have mentioned that today. We need to know when people arrive, how long they stay, when they get off, why they get off, and what we can do about it. My own view is that it could be nationally led and driven. As a Monty Python fan, I love this, and unfortunately this is true of the sector. We are all individuals, we're operating individually. There isn't a collective, an agreed and right way to do this, and there should be. Who should be driving it? In my opinion, Sport England should be. But not on its own, clearly. The LGA must be in there, UK Active should be in there, Public Health should be in there, along with, and I think there are a few out there who would be very keen to get involved and work on this, responsible contractors and in-house operators. Having listened to a lot of stuff that's going on today, from swimming, from Lisa, from the guys to do with the Activity Alliance and Mind, to me, if it doesn't happen now, when is it going to happen? That's my lot. I'm off out the door. See you. Thank you.